Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this end of the magnificent sunrise safari here at Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Great Kruger National Park of South Africa. That is Tandy. My name is James Hendry, and we're going to be spending some time with Tandy and her little tiny baby cub today. Please do talk to us using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. Otherwise, you can talk to us using the chat stream on YouTube. Why, you might ask yourself, is this cretin talking to you with such a quiet voice? Well, it is my impression that Tandy does not like the sound of the human voice, and that is why she gets a little irritated with us. And so I'm going to speak very quietly. I'm also going to sneeze now. Oops. And there comes the little cub. Here comes the cub. Oh, look. As the light peeps out. Now, I'm told that it is 69 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius. And the one most important thing that I have not told you yet is not the name of the cub, because it doesn't have a name yet, but the name of the person bringing you these magnificent pictures. That is, of course, David Eastall. Now, it's a long time since I said David's surname. That's largely because it is very strange indeed. Eastall. I think it's... What strange origin is it, David? It's French, is it? How very strange. Yes, anyway. Let us not worry about French surnames. Let us worry about this magnificent leopard and her cub. This excites me greatly. I haven't spent any time with them. Oh, it's so sweet. I've got one or two views of this little thing before, but never anything like this, and I've been watching with nothing but immense jealousy. As my so-called friends have been enjoying views of her playing. Isn't that just the most precious thing you've ever seen in your life? Oh. Mr. T, you're wondering how good Tandy's hearing is. The answer is absolutely fantastic. They can hear, see, and smell beautifully. I'm very pleased that she's just quiet. It is flicking though, and she did give us one or two little hisses earlier today. I mean, we're a long way from her, a good 40 meters or so, which is about 130 feet. I'm just going to tell Aubrey on the radio that we have relocated her. In fact, I might not. I might just let him come in here, regardless. What an amazing start to the day we've had. Lions, leopards, and now with the great Stevovo. There we were. The little cub is now suckling. And of course, at just over 9 weeks old, she's coming to the point at which weaning is going to start. And so you've already seen her eating a little bit of meat of late, and her milk reserves, she should wean around about 3 weeks, at least 3 months. So in about 3 weeks or so, she should finish. Chitwa, you say, have we done something to Tandy? Is that why she dislikes us? No, Tandy's always been a bit cantankerous. I'm not going to try and say that there hasn't been some insensitive driving around her. I really don't think from us. I think everyone in our team has been really uber sensitive with her. And one of the reasons is because we do spend these days a bit more time with her than anyone else does. But people who don't know her, who don't spend extended periods, don't understand the things that make her irritated, that make her cross. And the other thing is that, of course, we've got long lenses on these cameras, which means that we can park a lot further away and still get very nice views. Whereas if you are driving a vehicle and your guest has brought with them a sort of Christmas cracker standard pair of binoculars and a disposable camera, well, you've basically got to park on top of her in order to get a good picture. Now, as we've seen, a lot of cats really don't mind that. Leopards and lions and cheetah. But Tandy is not one of those. She finds that sort of thing distasteful and disrespectful, and so that's why she gets a little upset, especially when she's got a cub. I saw Karula do the same thing, though. Now, Karula, for those of you who don't know, is Tandy's mother. And she was tremendously relaxed. You could view her on foot. She didn't worry too much. But there was once or twice people got a little close to her in vehicles, and she gave them what we call a nasty rev, which means she came at them growling and shouting. Normally, when the guide involved came in talking loudly, or his guests were talking loudly and moving around on the back of the car. So I think there are ways of reading the body language. I mean, she is very clear when she's not happy. She will give you a little hiss, a little growl. But it's not only with the cub. I mean, I parked with VM once. She'd just had the cub, but she was a long way from the den. She'd just been finishing a meal, and she was resting in the shade. And we parked, I'd say 30 meters from her, which is about, call it 100 feet or so. Well, so playful that she disappeared. In fact, they are disappearing. I don't know where they're going. I'm just going to keep an eye before we move. There she goes. She's coming up. She's in there. Can you see her, Darth? I think you're slightly unsighted there. She's just inside there. She pricked her ears up, and started to move towards this area. And I wonder if she hasn't heard the footfall or the hoof fall of a duiker. Something that she could eat. The cub was following, but I don't see her continuing up the hill behind her mother. Look how beautifully hidden she is in there. It's like a little drop of gold with black spots, isn't it? Something about that golden colour that just inspires such excitement in human beings. Yeah, she's definitely heard something. That's why she's moved. Now, what that is, I don't know. I thought maybe it was the incoming of a hyena, but I'm not sure. Okay, we're going to wait and see what happens here. Let's go back across to Stifofo, who is still on foot with his elephant. She's done is she's moved out of the drainage line and up onto this little log in the sun. I don't know what she's looking at or what has arrested her attention, but she lay there for a little while. The cub is just behind her, and I'm continuing with my theory that she doesn't like the sound of our voices. We're closer to her than we were before. She gave us one look, but there was no snarl or irritation with it. And so I'm just going to continue talking very quietly like this, and I'm sorry if it is a little difficult to hear me. The cub is just behind her on the other side of the log, and we're hoping that she will come up into the sun. Oh, there's a helmet shrike. There we go. To the left-hand side. They're just coming to shout the alarm at the leopard. Isn't that wonderful? They're now all sitting on the tree above her, just giving their clicking alarm call. Click, 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 click. Can you hear it? I don't know if you can hear it. It just sounds like it sounds like very dim firecrackers. Click, 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 click. Now they've gone off. The cub is down there somewhere, and I'm hoping desperately that she's going to come up and expose herself in the golden light, because that, of course, will give us a lovely cliched photograph of this magnificent leopard cub in the sunlight, which I have yet to get, I might tell you. I woke up this morning thinking, please, today must be the day I get a decent shot of this little cub. Now, the other thing is that we've asked David, sitting on the back of the car, to sit as quiet as possible, so you're not going to see a huge amount of movement from the camera when we're this close. Philip, you're wondering about a muzzle spot pattern yet, and if we could see it on the cub. Yes, the answer is that we could. We're just going to be a little bit quiet now. If she gives us another look like that, I'm going to back off. Philip, you can see a muzzle shot, or muzzle spot pattern on the cub, but it's very, it's indistinct, because although she's born with the spots that she'll have for the rest of her life, what happens is that those spots are very close together when she's little. It's a little bit like when you've got a pattern on a balloon. You know, if you buy a balloon that's got something written on it or drawn on it, here's a little cup behind her now. That balloon, you can almost not make it out until you blow the balloon up. Do you know what I mean by that? It's exactly the same as this cub. She's got all of the spots that she'll have until the day she shakes off this mortal coil. But as she expands, so those spots will move apart from each other and make it much easier to see the spot pattern above the muzzle. But in theory, we could probably guess what that spot pattern's going to be if we have a really good look of her not behind a tree or fast asleep. She's too sweet. Oh, look. Tandy has seen something. In fact, I suspect she hasn't seen something. A bundle of fluff's just gone behind the bush. Tandy went back down to exactly where she was before. We parked a little bit closer with a kind of open view down into the drainage system, and she sat there for a while, and then she gave us a bit of a hiss, and so we moved back to where we were originally. The cub now adventuring slightly, which is very nice if you're a cub to adventure. She's just gone up there into those bushes. That's quite far away. I mean, that's about... she's about 50 meters away. I mean, that's a good distance. About 170 feet odd. There it is. Stalking around. Now, this little thing is quite like this. And Tristan, I remember when... he was following them from one den site to the other. Tandy was trying to get the cub to come with her, and Tristan described her as being quite rebellious, which she is, of course. Now, consulting detective, you're wondering how much I think that cub weighs. I would say in the region of 1.5 kilograms, so almost 2 pounds. Not much more than that, if that. It's a very small thing. Maybe a bit more. Let's call it 2.5 kilos, in fact. I was trying to think of a sort of iron mass. Let's go with 2.5 to 3 kilograms, so about 6 pounds, actually. I think 1 kilogram would be much too light, actually. But it certainly wouldn't be heavy. She probably weighs in at around about 40 kilos. She's a good-sized female leopard for this area. And 40 to 45 kilograms would be what you'd expect her to weigh, which is around about 100 pounds. Remember, so many of these mass estimates that have been made are not based on actual measurements, it's guessing. And as I say, there's a wonderful mammal book that I use. If you can soldier through the extremely dry text in it, it's great because it tells you how many animals have actually been weighed or measured or sampled. And if you look at a table of leopard masses, in fact I'll try and find it for this area, you'll find that they've probably only weighed around about 20 or so animals, and so to give an average mass from that is quite difficult. The other thing you'll find is that many of the guidebooks you read are often not based on sort of science. What happens is that guides like me come up and theorize about interesting things and what they think's going on, and it's not based on science, and eventually it becomes basically it becomes law, or it becomes part of legend, these facts and things that guides throw around. A classic example being that impala are able to hold their babies for favourable conditions, which is absolute nonsense. But it's the kind of thing that gets itself into books even, because guides keep talking to themselves about it again and again and again. So I'll try and find out exactly what the range of mass is in this particular area. While we do that, the baby lion, which is substantially heavier than the baby leopard, is up and about. Look at what we've got here. Sorry everybody about that crash cut. Jamie's feed has somehow died, but we've got this little cub now coming back towards Mum. She had climbed a tree a long way away from Tandy. We had just spotted the leaves waving, and it was because this naughty little thing had walked away from Mum so far. Now she's stalking her mother. I believe most of you are discussing what we should call this cub. Well, it's a little early for that yet. So if you are wondering, it's not going to happen. Okay, apparently we're now going to go to an unscheduled broadcast. We're going to join with social media. Go, Kirsten, go. Now, very warm welcome to our new viewers watching. We are sitting here in the Greater Kruger National Park of South Africa, Djuma Private Game Reserve to be more exact, and that, everybody, is Tandy, an almost 10-year-old leopardess, and her little cub, who is now 9 weeks old, just been out exploring and is now come back for a little bit of milk. My name is James Hendry, and it's marvellous to have you with us. You can ask us any questions you like while we're sitting here with this cub. I'm just going to talk very quietly, because this leopardess can be a little bit cantankerous when she doesn't like, or when she hears the sound of vehicles and voices. And so I'm just going to be talking very quietly in respect for the amazing, confiding nature with which she is showing us this little cub. Isn't that precious? Now, some of you will have been watching these broadcasts before, and you'll know that we've been following this cub almost since the day she was born. And now, like I say, she's 9 weeks old, and so the weaning process has begun. And she will shortly have to wean completely off milk, so this will be, she's got about 3 more weeks of milk drinking, after which she's going to have to move on to a largely meat diet, but that will be caught for her, of course, by her mother, long-suffering mother, whose name is Tandy. And you can just see, like all youngsters, needs to have a little bit of a clean now and then. Hello, Barbara. You say, how beautiful. Well, there's very little that is more beautiful than a leopard, especially in the morning light, and especially when there's a tiny little cub. Well, Bill, you say you can't believe how close we are. We're not actually that close. We're probably about, I'm going to say about 40 meters or so. So about 130 feet odd, or 110 feet. And the reason that we are this far away, or the reason it looks so close, is that the camera lens is actually just very effective at getting us in close. Vanessa, you say, is there only one cub? Yes, at the moment. It's unusual that she would have given birth to only one cub, and so it's possible that she lost one, very, very early on. We've only ever seen one cub, though. And this leopardess is quite interesting. The last litter she raised, she had two. She lost one of them, we think, to baboons. We think baboons killed one of them. And she only managed to raise the one. He's now an independent male called Tamba. He'll only be 20 months old this month, I think. And before that, she has raised a few litters, but normally only one. And Stephen, you say, how many do they normally have? Well, they don't really have a normal number, but most often I've seen two, sometimes three. I've never seen a leopardess actually successfully raise three, though. Normally she'll lose one, but two or three would be the average. It's quite possible she only gave birth to just this one. That's very sweet. And she's been doing this all morning, so she'll suckle a little bit. And then what she does is she goes off and plays for a while, and then she gets hungry or she gets nervous and she comes rushing back to mum. Maria, you say, OMG, so cute, love that animal. Well, Maria, it's certainly worth loving. It is a magnificent creature, is this leopard. Now, Stephanie, you ask a very good question. You say, what is a leopard's biggest threat in the wild? A leopard's biggest threat out here, especially a little leopard like this, is, funnily enough, other male leopards. Apparently, in this region, 80% of cub deaths that happen before the cub is 2 years old are perpetrated by unrelated male leopards. So his or her father, we think, is a leopard called Tingana, who is, I think, pushing 12 this year. He's about a 12-year-old male this year. And if he wasn't around and a sort of marauding male came in here, he could easily kill the cub. Hyenas are a definite threat. They're not very good climbers, and this little cub can climb now, so she'd be relatively safe from hyenas. Lions, always a danger. Lions kill all other predators if they can, and so it really wouldn't be surprising were her little cub to fall prey to lions. But, every day she gets older, she has a better chance of survival. Heather, you say, will this be her last litter because of her age? No, I don't think so. Let's pretend that this little cub makes it to adulthood, so she'll probably go independent between 18 months and 2 years, after which Tandy could easily give birth again, she could give birth, as little as 2 years from now, which would put her at about 13. No, what did I say? 13 or 14, pushing 14. And that's not impossible. That would be old. I would suspect that she's probably got one more litter in her after this. Maybe two. But if this cub was to die for some reason, she'd come into estrus immediately again, and should almost certainly produce another cub. I'm just reading here from my little field guide that the average number of cubs in this particular area is about 2.2. So between 2 and 3 is normal. And some say even lower than that, so just below 2 in some research. So between 1 and 2 in some areas, and between 2 and 3 in others. And interestingly, the birthing interval in a lot of research has been even less than 2 years. So, given that sort of 17 months, 18 months, 19 months, it's entirely possible she could have another 2 litters if no fate befalls her. Remember, even though she's an adult, her life is still quite difficult. Barbara, you say this cub looks like she has huge paws. Isn't that the case with all little animals, though? We see their feet and we think, good grief, look how big those little paws are. Think of a puppy running along the beach or something like that. Yes, she does have big paws, absolutely. But that's totally normal. And they always say that about children. You know, especially young boys. They say, well, look at the size of his feet. He's going to be a big fellow. In my case, they said, goodness, look at the size of his feet. He's not going to grow very much. And they were right. But I think she will grow to round about the same size as her mother. Her mother is a good-sized female. She's not enormous. You can imagine how much more milk this cub is getting, given that she doesn't have any litter mates. Now we're going to play a little bit. Find out why Mum is asleep, when clearly there is playing to be done. Get up, Mum, come on. I wish to chew on your neck, or bite your ears. They are so long-suffering, these mothers. She's just cleaning her mum now, actually. That's very sweet. Curly Sue, you make a good point. You say it looks like she's breathing hard. She is. There are two reasons for that. One is that it's warming up. Two is that she has just eaten. Well, not just eaten. There was a warthog. They ate a warthog here yesterday, a baby warthog. So her stomach will be relatively full, which means that with a full stomach like that, she's going to produce a lot of metabolic heat, and she'll need to get rid of that. And the other is, I wonder if there isn't an element of the fact that the cub was suckling that makes her hot, it increases her body temperature somehow. All right, to all of you watching on social media, it's been wonderful having you with us. We are going to close down this broadcast, but if you want to keep on watching, then just Google Safari Live, and you can join one of our twice daily safaris, including a continuation of this one. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you soon. All right, everybody. Apparently we are going to go back across the Masai Mara, where Jamie Patterson is sitting with what has been described to me as a hammerhead shark bird thing. It has become very cute suddenly, everybody. The cub is trying to play with Mum. Mum is now acquiescing to a little bit of playtime. Interestingly, what I did was I put Ronald on the floor just to see if we couldn't get him to the base of the tree where she was yesterday. Now, that's a good 50 meters from where she is now. She picked up the sound of his engine immediately. So Ronald is not going to be going any further than he's gone now, which is about 3 feet from the car. Their ears are exceptional. I mean, Ron can be a bit noisy when he moves. Anyway, it's okay. Ronald can't be involved in every sighting. That's a very good question from Jojo, very interesting perspective. You say, do I think Tandy is habituating the guides by giving us a signal when she's not happy? Yeah, I guess it's exactly what she's doing. She's saying, that is too close, that is too noisy, that is too much movement, that is too exposed, you are in the way. So yes, I suppose she is. But what's interesting, as Tristan pointed out to me, was that she will, often animals will approach you, and if you stay still, they've chosen to approach, and that's normally fine. It normally doesn't kind of make a difference. But with her, if she approaches you and puts you between her and the cub, then she blames you for that problem, and she can be quite nasty about it. Tristan's had a few experiences, because he spent, I think, the most time with this cub. He's had a few experiences where she's been taking the cub somewhere, has approached him, walked around him, the cub has scuttled off somewhere else in her rebellious way, and then she's turned around and hissed and shouted at Tristan, because he happens to have not moved, but the cub, between the cub and her, they've put him between each other, and she doesn't like that. So she's not very good at taking responsibility for creating a situation that she doesn't like. Very silly girl. Wasn't that a wonderful little sighting? I don't think there's any reason for us to leave here, so I think we're just going to stay right where we are. Unless they both go completely fast asleep, but I think these cubs seldom sleep for very long. Hello, it's me, Pinky Lee. That's your name, I believe, on Twitter. How wonderful. It's me, Pinky Lee. You want to know if she... Well, listen to my voice. My voice has got a little bit... I've started speaking normally, and she's immediately reacted to it, actually. I'm going to talk quietly again. It's me, Pinky Lee. You want to know if they can live in the same territories, mother and daughter, when the daughter is an adult? The answer is no, an unequivocal no. They will become less and less friendly with each other. And we used to watch Karula, who and Tandy's sister, Shadow, meet on the boundary of their territories, not often, but sometimes, and it was not cordial. There were spit bubbles blown and growling and general dissatisfaction. This is fantastic stuff. It really is utterly fantastic. Wonderful. And of course, while this cub has the advantage of extra milk because she's on her own, it does mean that Tandy has to take part in all the play activity, which means the little thing doesn't have a sibling to play with. And sibling playing, of course, takes a huge load off Mum. Her tail takes much less of a beating than it's taking right now. She's going to pounce again. You can look under her tail again there if you want. I'm convinced that this is a female. Noelle is not convinced that it's a female. But time will tell. I've made far too many mistakes to be saying outright that Noelle is mistaken. No, there it is. That's a female. Mike, you say how many leopards can this area realistically support? Mike, it supports as many as it can already, you know. The leopards are very good at filling into an area. There's not an oversupply of hyena or lion in this area, and so that means that if there is a vacant territory, and that it will be occupied, and the size of a territory is defined almost exclusively by the amount of prey there is. So you will find that this area probably sustains the maximum number of leopards that it can. Now, the Sabi sand supports, including cubs, males, sub-adults, and non-territorials, roughly 100 or 90 to 100 animals, leopards. So you can work it out at 15 square kilometers per female. And if there are 60,000 hectares here, that's 600 square kilometers. And so that is 30 female territories. No, that's not. 15 goes into 60. How many times, David? It is 4 times. That's 40 female territories in the area. Let's say each of those females has an average of 1 cub, because some won't have. So that's 80. And then you can divide the number of females by Males, you can divide them by 3. So let's call it 10 or so. Let's call it 40 of them divided by 3 odd. I'll just call it 10 territorial males. So we're already up to 90 odd. In fact, let's not say every female's got a cub. Let's say, including the sub-adults who are going independent, every female's got a cub. So that's 80 plus, say, 10 to 15 males, which makes it 95, plus a few non-territorial males. This is just fantastic stuff. And so, yeah, let's put it slightly over 100. Let's call it 110 odd. That would be, I think, a relatively accurate estimate. But then, of course, the territory sizes are a bit bigger away from the Sand River, so you might be able to knock that off by 10 or so. Yeah, let's say between 90 and 100. That is very sweet. And every time I laugh, the mother looks at me as if to say, "What are you laughing at?" Stanley Cubed, you say, do cubs without litter mates turn out differently from cubs with litter mates? In other words, do only children turn out spoilt and nasty versus those of us who've had siblings? I don't know. I mean, they do, but whether that's because they would have turned out differently anyway, I'm not sure. I imagine there must be some difference. But you know, Stanley Cubed, the interesting thing about leopards and their siblings is that they don't turn out the same. And although they are born, obviously, as twins or triplets, they develop their own personalities, which are, I mean, given the amount of actual tuition that goes on between mother and cub, you'll probably find that, you know, that character is largely encoded in the DNA. I know this is not the best picture of a leopardess you've ever had, but I'm not sure that I can move. Shall we try a little move, Darby? And so, Stanley, it's difficult to say. You know, in fact, almost impossible to say whether or not a leopardess or a leopard raised on its own was necessarily different because it was raised on its own, as opposed to because it's just genetically different. And I often like to tell the story, and many of you will know this, of course, from Karula's youngsters, Quarantine and Konuma. I like to tell the story of 2 males that I knew way back when I started guiding. And they grew up, one of them completely relaxed and calm and easy with vehicles, the other vicious. Not vicious, just really unhappy with cars. And he used to charge at a moment's notice. He'd come from miles away, straight at vehicles. And it made no sense. But they had been raised exactly the same way. They hadn't had any different experiences. And so, you know, whether or not you could put down any of this leopard's adult character traits to the fact that she'd been born or raised alone, I don't know. This is exactly the morning I wanted, everybody. I wanted a morning with this cub and the baby and, of course, you lot, and no other vehicles here. It is just very special that we've had that. Oh, no. Isn't that magnificent? And you can't believe this. You just sit and watch this all day long. Lilo, you said the leopards have the longest tails of the big cats. No, I don't think so. I think you'll probably find that honour goes to cheetah. Cheetahs certainly have heavier tails. They are quite long, leopards' tails, but I would have still said that cheetah probably have slightly longer tails. This thing is now really, she is very rebellious. Come on, jump on your mum. This is very precious stuff. Let's just keep watching it for as long as it lasts. We must remember, of course, that these leopard cubs are not something that are around all the time. It's a very rare, well, it's not that rare, I guess, in these parts. We are very lucky with the number of cubs we see. But they do grow up so fast, these little things. And they will not always be little. Quite nice that there's another female in the area. You know, we've had Hosana and Tamba. Of course, Hosana's sister, Shongile, would be celebrating her second birthday with Hosana, but she has, unfortunately, we think, shaken off this mortal coil. And so we've got Tamba, who is now 20 months old, and Hosana, who's nearly 2. And they're going to move away eventually. They're going to start roaming wider and wider as they get older. Whereas this little thing will probably be with us for quite some time. And if we're very lucky, she will grow up and set up a territory very close to her mother's. Alrighty, we're going to have a brief hiatus from this leopard cub. We're going to go across to Jamie Patterson, who has got something that likes to kill other things in the sky. Yes, special moment before she grows up indeed. We're having so many of those little moments right now. It got a little bit sunny down there. Now this is exactly when Tandy can become a little bit cantankerous. She walks closer to you and then looks up and says, "Why are you so close to me? Go away." Keep thinking about trying to get Ronald close to the tree where the kill was, but because she's not coming up towards it, I don't think there's any point really. But imagine Ronald parked right next to them there, with them just completely ignoring him and playing with him. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Not playing with him, playing with each other. Just in case you are a new viewer, Ronald is a rover. He's a little robot that we use to get us sort of tortoise-eye views, if you like, of the wilderness. And he's been becoming quite friendly with lions and hyenas late. Now, Scarlett, you're wondering how far away Tandy is from the Nkuhuma Pride, where Noel has been most of the morning. They are, as the crow flies, not very far, about, I'm going to say, a kilometre or so, so less than a mile, about 3/4 of a mile, to be completely accurate, 5/8 of a mile. Yeah, we're just not quite in the right position now as the sun pops out. I will try and get us into a slightly better position, I think, but let's just wait and see if she doesn't move. Cheetah, yes, I do, absolutely. You say, do I think she likes playing with a cub? Yeah. You know, animals are, unlike us, don't feel compelled to do certain things. They don't, as far as we know, become overcome with guilt when they are not doing their duty, and so they do what they feel like doing. And when she feels angry, she expresses anger. When she feels a sense of enjoyment in playing, then she'll play with the cub like she's playing now. So yes, I mean, as far as enjoyment goes, whether she makes a decision that she really enjoys doing it or not, I'm not sure. But I'm sure there is an element of pleasure she gets from doing it, because otherwise she wouldn't do it. In the same way that she wouldn't eat if she didn't get hungry. Unlike a human being, which eats for the sake of eating. Not so, David. I certainly do. That is very sweet. I think we will have to move, though, eventually. Ellie, fantastic. You say David Attenborough would be jealous of the sighting. I think you'll find that David Attenborough has seen some things in his time, over his 90-odd years, that while this certainly must compare with some of the best of them, I reckon he's probably seen enough in those 90 years for him to be, well, not too jealous of what we're having here. But what a life he has led, hasn't he? And what a contribution he's made, more importantly. This is very precious. Very precious time we have. Now she's getting, I suspect, a little bit tired of playing. See, she's moved away. Her tail constantly just flicking a little bit in irritation. Now, First Lady, this is a question that we get asked a lot. What would happen if Tumba, this little cub's brother, were to come across them, and were he to see his mother with another little baby? Well, we don't really know, but very often when it does, this sort of thing does happen, you find that if the unrelated, or the male leopard that they come across is related and young, he will not react in a negative way at all. So his mother will chase him away, unless there's food. And I mean, Tumba's bigger than his mum now, so he might chase her off some food. But he would almost certainly not try and push home an attack on the youngster. And he'd show interest, but there wouldn't be affection. You'd be highly unlikely to see any form of affection between a male leopard and a youngster. And I keep quoting this, but you may, if she came across Shadow, for example, who's her sister and littermate, you'd be highly unlikely to see Shadow showing any affection for the youngster. But I keep quoting this example from Rondolozi down the way, where a leopardess adopted her granddaughter and raised her. So that was an example of a grandmother showing affection for a youngster and adopt. Very few pioneers become masters, and I definitely fit that bill. Now, we're going to spend another few minutes with Tandy. I feel like she's saying to me, you know, I've been very patient with you guys. You've spent 2 hours with me now, and I'd now like you to clear off, please. Just every so often she's lifting her top lip to reveal her fairly substantial canines. And so we're going to do one more little segment here, and then we're going to head off towards the lions with Ronald and the hyenas. We're going to see if we can get some pictures with Ronald of the hyenas and of the lions. Lovely sounds you can just hear in the background there of the emerald spotted wood dove going. Everything's just getting calm and quiet now. That little cub is just too sweet. Which of course is almost, it's almost a silly thing to say, because I've never seen a cub that isn't sweet, in the same way that I've never seen anyone describe a female leopard as anything other than beautiful. Other than myself, of course, but I won't make that mistake again. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when I arrived here at Wild Earth, I hadn't met Karula before, who's Tandy's mother, and she was the great favourite amongst our regular viewers. And when I met her, I described her as being slightly pug-faced. Well, you cannot believe the storm of discontent I unleashed on social media when I suggested that Karula was not the best-looking leopard I'd ever seen in my life. Anyway, I won't ever make that mistake again, I can assure you. And so we continue describing female leopards as beautiful and males as big. Sid, all cats are in some way threatened. You say, are leopards in danger or endangered? Not as such, no. But it's very difficult to get accurate numbers of how many there are. In fact, it's almost impossible to get accurate numbers of how many there are. And that's because they live such secretive lives. They do live outside of protected areas. So, for example, if you go, they're found on walking through Nelspruit, which is a fairly large town. Well, you might even call it a city. I don't know if it has a cathedral. But in the Lowveld, there was one found walking through a gas station the other day. And they still find them every so often on the outskirts of Pretoria, which is the capital of South Africa. You'll find them in the mountains around Cape Town if you look carefully enough. And so they're around, but it's very difficult to quantify how many of them are around, and so we're not sure if they're endangered. The big danger would be to say, they're fine, they can live anywhere, they'll be all right. And that would be a mistake, because we don't know. Now, I am talking, of course, exclusively about the African leopard. Various other leopard subspecies, because they're all the same species, Panthera pardus, are endangered, and the most endangered, of course, is the Amur leopard of eastern Russia, near the town of Vladivostok. I just have to say that every so often, Vladivostok, it makes me feel happy. And the Amur leopard there, they reckon there are only 50 or so left in the leopard reserve that they have there. And there are, again, an unknown number in the forests around Vladivostok and north of that wonderful town. Have you been to Vladivostok, David?
No.
It is interesting. I wouldn't describe it as Paris, or something like that, but it is worth visiting. On the seaside. It is like the San Francisco of Russia. Without the bridge. They've got a bridge, though. It's not quite the same. All right, we're going to leave this area now. We're going to leave little Tandy and little Cubby, whose name is not Rebel Wilson, and go across to Stephen before you can react to what I've just said. Goodbye.